Welcome back to our channel. We are Robin and Graham. We just spent the last couple weeks exploring the amazing country of Peru.
And today we want to walk you through a guide that's going to help you plan your trip. Everything from apps, tips, things we wish we knew, and even our route of the cities that we were fortunate enough to explore. So come along. First off, we're going to cover some of our thoughts on Peru. And man, was I think both of us actually, were surprised about everything that Peru has to offer. It literally has coastlines and beaches. It has mountains, jungles, deserts, like literally
just
every
a little bit of everything.
Climate that you could expect, Peru seemed to have.
It is a great country for any kind of traveler. For us, we consider ourselves comfort backpackers, so we definitely try to find the cheapest option, but we're not maybe going the cheapest that you can. Especially because this was a family trip, we like to stay more so in like Airbnbs, hotels. We did a lot of tours, and lots of the tours included accommodation, so it was a little bit different than our usual backpacking style. But just to give you an overall feeling of what this video is going to entail, those are the types of travelers that we are.
Now, to get started, to make you feel comfortable planning your Peru trip, we're going to cover some helpful tips. So first, we're going to talk about the currency. In Peru, they use the Peruvian sol, and we use an app called XE where you can add the currency to the app, and then that way you can see an automatic conversion to whichever currency that you typically work with. So for us, the Canadian dollar.
Another helpful tip that we have for you guys has to do with the language barrier, because there are lots of locals who do speak some kind of broken English, especially if you're going with tour companies and everything like that, but lots of the locals do speak Spanish. Now, something that we use to help us is Google Translate. You can actually download a language on Google Translate so that you can use it offline. So when you're out and about, or maybe you're trying to barter with someone because you're buying something at a local market, it's a tool that you can use to help brokenly translate what they're saying and what you are trying to say as well.
One feature that I really like on Google Translate is that you can actually use the camera and you just hold your phone over a menu or any instructions or anything like that, and it'll automatically translate the word to your language, which is very helpful.
Now, if you know a little bit of Spanish, that's fantastic. If you don't know anything, Graham and I always try to at least learn how to say hello, which is hola, and thank you, which is gracias, just to show that we're trying to use their language. If you know a little bit more, fantastic, but this is kind of the bare minimum that we at least like to put into each and every one of the countries that we go to.
Now, some other helpful apps that we like to use are Booking.com, Hostelworld, and Airbnb for any accommodation. Peru was very big on Uber, so we use that a lot for our transportation. And Get Your Guide and Viator are great apps for any activities that you'd like to do. Now, when you're traveling abroad, lots of people wonder how you're going to use your phone. We decided to go back with an eSIM. If you've seen our Bali Indonesia experience, you'll know that we didn't have the most luck with an eSIM, but we tried it again, and this time we're much more fortunate, and it worked for us. This time we used AlloSIM, and it was very simple. They had a breakdown of steps you need to take to make sure your eSIM is activated. It was very well priced, so I would highly recommend AlloSIM.
It's also nice because you can set up your eSIM before you even get to the country. So as soon as you get off the plane, you have data and you're able to figure out how to get to your accommodation. Now, another question we often get asked when people are about to start heading off on their backpacking adventure is how to make payments in the country that they're going to. And in Peru, we found that predominantly it was cash-based. However, in the touristy areas, of course, they do accept, or some places do accept card, but if you are going to any local markets or any like kind of off the main track areas, probably expect to just use cash, especially too if you are doing any tours and you are wanting to tip. Cash-based is best.
Yeah. One thing to also look out for if you are using your credit card is just before you go, check on the foreign transaction fees. We have credit cards that don't have any, but some do, and don't want to be spending that extra money on top of what you're already spending.
Now, something we also like to briefly touch on is if it is safe to drink the tap water, and it is not safe to drink the tap water in Peru. So either stick to bottled water that you buy, or if you have a water bottle like we do, we have the Grail GeoPress water bottle that filters and purifies. The purifies is the key thing when you are drinking international water, because there's bacteria and viruses that can affect your stomach in not great ways. Then you're able to do the tap water. So just do a little bit of research into what you're going to bring with you to kind of tackle this, or to just stay safe, drink the bottled water instead.
Next, we want to chat a little bit about the best time to visit Peru. Now, their summer months, or their sunny season, runs from May to September, which is obviously the best time for hiking, but also means the most tourists. So a little bit of give and take there. We were there in December, which is the first month of their rainy season, and that runs until March. Because Peru is so big and so vast, and there's so many different climates and elevations, rainy in one area like the Andes in December means it could be sunny and warm in Lima, which is exactly what we experienced. So depending on where you're wanting to visit, just be sure to check what that weather is like at that specific time of year.
The next thing that we like to touch on is the visas that you might need for the country. Now, if you've never seen one of our videos before, or you don't know, Graham and I are from Canada, so this is specifically for Canadians. I'm sure it falls under a couple other countries, but just do your own research if you aren't from Canada, just to double check. But if you are a Canadian citizen, you don't actually need to get a visa prior to going to Peru. You'll get one upon arrival, as long as you're there for under 90 days.
Once you've gotten into Peru, we want to chat a little bit about how you're going to get from city to city or around each city.
I will say that this is probably what I stress about the most when we're planning for a trip to a country that we've never been to, is how I'm actually going to get from place to place. So if you're a little bit more of an anxious traveler like myself, then this is a very good section for you.
So we're going to start with some of the longer travel, and because Peru is so vast and there's a huge mountain range in there, the easiest way to get around quickly is by flying. The most popular airline is LATAM Airlines, which I think we only flew with them.
I think so.
The other ones that you'll probably see are Sky Airline and Avianca.
Now, the reason why we're specifically mentioning these airlines is because they tend to be a little bit more budget friendly. There's lots of different airlines that you can choose from, but each of the countries typically has their own budget friendly flights, and these are some really popular airlines for that. Now, another popular way for you to get from place to place in Peru, especially, it's a great cheaper alternative if you have a little bit more time there, is to go by bus. Now, some of the bus lines will have an option for third class, which is just like a normal bus, second class, and first class, and really all that mainly defines it is how big the seats are and how much they recline. So we predominantly chose to go with a second class bus option, especially on either longer journeys or overnight journeys.
Yeah.
And for the most part, it worked out really well. They were bigger, we could recline. Now, one of our buses did break down, and on one of our overnight journeys, my dad did get his passport stolen, so we didn't have the best luck with Peruvian buses. But don't let that scare you. My sister was there for a month traveling with her friend, and they took buses everywhere and had no problems. We were just in the wrong place at the wrong time, it seemed like.
Now, a third way that you can go from town to town is on a smaller shared bus system called a Colectivo. We didn't actually take any of these. Robin's parents did, and said it was a very simple process. And they also said it's cost friendly, which is good, obviously. Because
they tend to be quite a bit busier. This is the way that the locals typically get from place to place. So it is the cheapest option for sure. Now for the next part of this video, we're going to take you through the route that we did in Peru. Now, because of some things that happened, it was a little bit random, the route that we actually did. And I think if we were to go back and do the same exact cities, we'd probably take a different route altogether. But we'll at least tell you the places that we did visit. And I honestly feel like we had a really good overall picture of everything we kind of wanted to see in Peru. I think if I was to change anything, I would spend more time in Peru so that we could travel slower between each one of these places, because we were definitely moving very fast almost the whole time.
So to get started, we want to cover Lima. Now, Lima is where we finished our trip, but it's also where we started our trip.
And we got
also
there
in the middle of our trip. So we were there a few times, but we really only explored it at the very end of our trip. And Lima is the capital of Peru, and it's very easy to access. There's tons of flights that come in from Europe, North America, all over South America. Now, the airport in Lima is way up in the north of the city, and most of the touristy popular areas like Miraflores and Barranco are in the south of the city. So you'll have to figure out a way to get from the airport down to the south if that's where you're staying. They have the bus express or airport line express that you can take. We stuck to Uber and it was very simple. Now, the other ways to get around Lima, they have a really simple metro is what they call it, which is actually just a bus line that goes down pretty much the center of the city. Has, I think, 38 to 40 stops along the way.
Kind of connects all the main spots that you would visit. We hopped on it in Barranco. It goes through Miraflores, and you can take it all the way up to the historic center of Lima as well. And it doesn't go in traffic, so that's why it is their rapid system. The overall vibe of Lima is kind of what you would expect for any big city. There's lots of different things to do, tons of restaurants to eat at. It's kind of what Lima is known for, is all the really great places to eat. Plus, with how big of a city it is, there's tons of different activities to do as well. Now, when you're choosing where you want to base yourself in Lima, there's a couple different popular neighborhoods that tourists typically stay at. The main ones being Barranco and Miraflores. Miraflores, I would kind of describe as that big city feel. Lots of newer buildings, skyscrapers, trendy cafes, things like that, really healthy food. Barranco tends to be a little bit more hipster, really focusing on art. It's got more of a boho feel. So honestly, it was probably one of our favorite neighborhoods.
Yeah, by far.
We stayed at a hotel that was right in the middle of both of those neighborhoods, thinking that we'd have a good advantage to either of them. But they're spaced far enough apart that it was either like a half an hour walk there, a half an hour walk there, or like over an hour to get from one to the other.
Yep.
So I think if we were to go back to it, we would base ourselves solely in Barranco. But another place that you can stay apart from those two neighborhoods is close to the historical center of Lima. So if you want a little bit more culture, more history, that would be a really good place to stay. We unfortunately, due to some stomach issues, did not get a chance to actually explore the area.
We got about halfway there.
We did, but we have heard from other travelers that that would be kind of the third area that you could stay in the city of Lima. Now, to quickly go through some of the main things to do in the city of Lima, one would be to walk along the main pathway of Miraflores. So it takes you all the way down by the ocean. You can see the surfers, the paragliders. There's a couple little beaches along the way, and then it does take you up on the cliff there as well. Now, something that we didn't do that is really popular, you can visit the catacombs under the San Francisco Church, or visit the Larco Museum if you want to get a bit more history that way. Like we had mentioned before, food is a really big thing in the city of Lima, so take yourself on a food tour, whether it's DIY or with a company. Ceviche is very popular in this area, so we would definitely recommend you trying it as well. Or you can do what we did and just wander around the neighborhoods. Overall, I would say 2 to 3 days would probably be what we would recommend staying in Lima. Now, you can base yourself in Lima and do a bunch of different excursions outside of the city, and I would say if you plan on doing more of those, then definitely expand your time. But for just exploring the city itself, 2 to 3 days would be plenty.
Now that we have seen one big city in Lima, we're going to jump to the second most popular spot that Peru has to offer, and this is Cusco. Cusco is the starting point for the Machu Picchu hike. It's very straightforward to get to. You can take a flight from Lima, it's only about an hour. Another way you can go is by bus. This is about 20 hours, but it's a really good option if you want to stop in at different cities along that route. And then that way you can break it up into smaller chunks and kind of pick your way up to the mountain. And now I say that because Cusco is 3,400 meters above sea level. And for most people, that is higher than they've ever been. So it takes definitely a day or two to adjust to the altitude. But once you're there, it's absolutely amazing.
Some people prefer to take a bus because it's a more gradual increase in the altitude. Because when you fly, you go from Lima, which is pretty much at sea level, all the way up to the mountains of Cusco. But that's what we did, and we were fine. We experienced a little bit of altitude sickness, but nothing we couldn't handle.
Cusco was definitely one of our favorite cities in Peru. It's got a rich Incan and Spanish history to it. It's got wonderful little coffee shops all over the place, especially in the center square. It's got gorgeous mountain views, and pretty much around every single corner there's another opportunity to take a photo with a little baby llama. And lastly, Cusco is very backpacker friendly.
So overall, it's just good vibes in Cusco.
Yeah. While we were in Cusco, we stayed at a small Airbnb with Robin's parents and sister. It was about a 10-15 minute walk to the center, which was very doable every day that we were there. Our only recommendation and biggest recommendation is stay as close to that historical center as you possibly can, because that is where pretty much everything is going on. Now, other than starting your hike to Machu Picchu in Cusco, there's a lot of other things to do, including hanging out at the Plaza de Armas, hiking to the ruins above the city, which are really cool and give you a great overall view of the city. We did a free walking tour, which was a great way to get acquainted with some of the history and get a little bit more to the outskirts of town, what we probably wouldn't have gotten to on our own. You can do a coca tasting either in the tea or a candy form, which is great for altitude sickness. So if you're feeling that higher altitude, pretty good option of something to do. And lastly, you can take a hike and a day trip to Rainbow Mountain. This is one that Robin and I did just on our own, and yes, it is very difficult, but it is absolutely so worth it. It was probably one of my favorite things that we did in our whole time in Peru. And yeah, I just can't recommend it enough.
You can also take day trips to the Sacred Valley or to visit Maras or Marais. So Cusco is really a good starting point to do a whole bunch of different excursions.
Yeah, and it's a great place to do a lot of hiking from. We would recommend staying in Cusco for probably at least 3 days. Like we said, there's a lot to do and a lot to take in. So one day exploring the city and a couple of day trips is going to set up a great experience in Cusco for you.
Maybe a day to adjust to the altitude. I think that we probably could have benefited from staying 2 or 3 days longer than we actually did.
I think so.
Just to slow down because we were only there for 3 days, we got out and got doing things right away, and we did like the Rainbow Mountain on our second day, and we definitely weren't feeling the greatest. So just if you have the time to give yourself a breather, I would even say around 4 or 5 days would be no problem to spend in Cusco.
Yeah.
The next place we went on our trip is to the city of Puno, which sits on Lake Titicaca, which is actually the destination that we were trying to get to. Now, Lake Titicaca stretches over both Peru and Bolivia, so obviously this is from the Peruvian side. So from Cusco, we took an overnight bus. That was about 7 hours-ish. This, unfortunately, was the span that my dad got his passport stolen in, so it kind of went downhill from here. And I would say that our experience in Puno might have been tainted a little bit with the experiences that we had, but we're going to share them with you anyways. The other way that you can get to Puno is through the Andean Explorer train. Now, this is definitely more of the luxury side, but it is another option if you didn't want to take the bus. Once you're in town, it's really easy to get around. It's walkable, you can take taxis, and they have tuk-tuks for you to get as well, which is always fun. Now, Puno, if you can believe it or not, actually is at a higher altitude than Cusco. So it sits at 3,800 meters above the sea level. And it's definitely one of the less touristy places. And I feel like it's a very dramatic shift from just how busy Cusco is. Now, I wouldn't say Puno is the most charming city that we had gone to. The parts that are done up for tourists were really romantic, very pretty. Lake Titicaca is known to be kind of like this romantic little getaway because if you don't know what it is a town that actually floats on reeds on the water. So the city Puno itself isn't really tailored towards tourists because all of the tourists are most often going on the lake, whether this is a day trip or you're staying with a local family there. Yeah. So we got really mixed feelings. I would say that where we would recommend you guys staying is in that main center plaza or around that main strip. We stayed at an Airbnb that was only about, I would say, like a 15-20 minute walk away from this area, but it definitely was more on the local side, and even our Airbnb host just reminded us to stay safe when we're walking around in this certain area. So I would say to save you guys from that, I would just book where all of the tourists are. Now, kind of like I was saying before, there isn't a ton to do in the city itself. You're really only coming to Puno so that you can go to visit the villages on Lake Titicaca. We are really sad that we didn't actually get to do this because that was the whole point of going to Puno in the first place. But once the passport was stolen, of course, our priorities changed to getting that all figured out, so we really just only got to explore the city of Puno. We would recommend probably only staying like one night in Puno. Use it kind of as a stopover to go to somewhere else. There's lots of buses going to Arakipa or Cusco, or a really long bus back to Lima, or even across the border to Bolivia. So those are kind of the main spots that you can hit after Puno.
So after our time in Puno and our bag getting stolen, we were down a little bit in the dumps, and luckily we came across Arakipa. This was exactly the jolt of energy and excitement and vibes that we needed, and man, I look fondly back on our time in Arakipa. Now, to get specifically from Puno to Arakipa, we took a bus. Now, this bus ride was supposed to take 5 hours. I think it probably took us closer to 7 or 8.
Yeah.
Largely because we broke down on the side of the highway and it was a whole ordeal. So if you haven't seen that video, go watch it because it's quite entertaining. The other ways you can get to Arakipa is from Lima, Cusco, and really anywhere with another major airport, as Arakipa does have its own airport. One thing that I think caught both of our eyes about Arakipa is that it is very different than the rest of the cities that we visited in Peru up to this time. It reminded us a lot of Europe, and there was a lot of different European architecture and designs and things going on. Yeah, I just really felt very welcoming, which was really important at this point in our trip. While we were there, we stayed at the Salina Arakipa hostel, and it was a really lovely stay. It had a great co-working space. Unfortunately, you had to pay for it, but there were lots of different amenities that we definitely took advantage of, including the pool, the restaurant, and the bar. Now, while you're in Arakipa, there's a few different things that you can do. We did a walking tour on our first day, and that was a great way to learn a little bit more about the city, its history, why there's so much European influence there. You can hang out in the center square. We were there Christmas time and it was amazing. There was a bunch of little kids choirs singing and decorations, and it was really wonderful. A popular day trip that people take from Arakipa is to go to the Colca Canyon, and the main attraction here is the condors.
But it also just makes a really great hiking trip in general. Something that we did that I really highly recommend is doing a pisco making class. That was honestly so fun. We were on the rooftop of one of the buildings. I think it was really just some local guy who had put his stuff up on Get Your Guide, and I think we were one of his first customers. But it was such a fun time. Pisco is such a popular drink, so it was nice to be able to make it for ourselves. And the last thing that we would recommend you checking out is this big indoor market that they have in Arakipa. We unfortunately only got there when they were already closing things down, but there was so many different vendors and it would be such a good place to visit in the daytime.
We would recommend staying in Arakipa for 2 to 3 days, probably 3 days if you're doing the Colca Canyon trek. Definitely one city that you have to put on your list while you're in Peru.
The next place we went to on our trip to Peru was somewhere that probably doesn't make a lot of sense to you if you are thinking of our route, because at this point we've made a really nice circle. But our next spot was actually Porto Maldonado, which is north of Cusco, which we would have kind of just come from that area. But with the whole passport situation, we kind of did a little revamp of the places that we wanted to see.
Yeah.
So Porto Maldonado is on the edge of the Amazon rainforest. So to get there, we first flew back to Lima because it is that main hub. And then we flew from Lima to Porto Maldonado. And that's definitely the most popular way and easiest way to get there. You can also take a bus from Cusco. So I think originally, if this had been on our place, we probably would have visited it right after Cusco. That would have made the most sense. Now, Porto Maldonado is a smaller city, but it's pretty substantial for where we are, which is kind of like in the middle of nowhere is what it feels like. And the climate of it is such a big contrast to everywhere we had been so far.
Yeah.
Porto Maldonado was hot and humid.
Like very
hot.
And very humid.
Because of that, and because we are surrounded in such thick vegetation, the wildlife was so incredible to hear. And especially if you were staying in an area that wasn't in the main city, the sounds were just constant.
Yeah.
For the first night, we just stayed at an Airbnb that we found just outside of the city. Now, because we were far enough away, we did have to taxi into the main city of Porto Maldonado whenever we needed to get food, get drinks, anything like that. So we were a little bit isolated that way. But then we did go and stay the rest of the time down the main river there at the Monte Amazonico Lodge, which was a very cool experience. And probably if you're traveling to Porto Maldonado, this is going to be an experience that you're looking for as well. Now, the main things that you can do in this area are jungle walks. Sometimes there's zip lining. You can cruise down the river that's there. A popular thing to do is to visit Sandoval Lake and the Tambopata National Reserve, and that's where you're really going to get to learn a lot about the local wildlife and the local vegetation. We saw things like monkeys, caimans, so many different types of birds, things like tarantulas and lots of other really large bugs that I could have gone without seeing. And we've heard that you can also see sloths if you're lucky. I would say 2 to 3 days is what we would recommend for this area. It gives you enough time to do all of these excursions. Now, you kind of have to gamble a little bit with the weather, especially if you are going in the wet season because you are in a rainforest there. So if you want to add a little bit of buffer, you definitely can, or just work with whatever you're given.
So after Porto Maldonado, we got back on a plane and flew back to Lima for trip number 4 there. And we made our way by bus down to the town of Paracas. The bus trip there was very, very simple. Straight down the coast, 3.5, 4 hours.
Very short.
Really short, really comfortable. So that is by far the easiest way to get there. Paracas is a cute little coastal town that's really small. I think Robin and I walked it like probably 5 or 6 times in one day, just doing laps and exploring and seeing if we can find new things. And it's located kind of in the middle of a desert a little bit, right on the coast of Peru. It has some absolutely terrific vibes, very relaxing. Go hang out on the beach, enjoy the sun. So if you need a place to relax, definitely go to Paracas. Since the town is not that big and you can really walk it in literally 20-30 minutes, its location is not all that important for where you stay. We stayed just 1 block in from the coastline, and it literally took us 30 seconds to get to the beach. So find somewhere you think you're going to be comfortable for a good price, and you're probably going to have a pretty good experience. Now, even though Paracas is small, it is mighty in the things that it offers. It has the Ballestas Islands, which is known as the poor man's Galapagos. It was about an hour boat trip that takes you out to the islands to see penguins and seals.
And so many
birds and all kinds of things. Next, you can visit the Paracas National Reserve. they do offer ATV and different trips through the reserve. We didn't do this because we kind of booked this last minute.
Yeah, and we didn't have a ton of time here.
Yeah, but I've heard wonderful things about riding an ATV through the National Reserve, of just the different views of the coastline and the ocean that you get. So this is definitely something that you should throw on the list. The biggest thing that people come to Paragas for is its access to the oasis of Huacachina.
Huacachina is a small village that's built around a lake that is surrounded by sand dunes.
Yep.
It is such a crazy experience to see. We've never been in an environment like this, and we absolutely loved it. The main thing that you do in Huacachina, of course, is the dune buggying and the sandboarding. Apart from that, really the town offers a very similar vibe to Paracas, I would say. The advantage of doing Paracas over Huacachina is that there's a little bit more to do. You're on the ocean as compared to on a lake, and the prices just tend to be a little bit cheaper because Huacachina is such a touristy destination. Everything is a little bit more in high demand.
Now we're going to flip back to Paracas. We would recommend staying there for about 2 to 3 days. I think that if you did Huacachina and the Ballestas Islands, or Huacachina and the National Reserve, you'd probably be able to fill those 2 days or 3 days very, very easily and continue either south or head back up north to Lima.
So that is actually the last place that we explored in the country of Peru. We actually went back to Lima after, and this is where we did all of the stuff that we had talked about at the beginning of when we talked about all of our destinations. For the most part, I'm really happy with all of the different places that we saw. We spent a lot more time in Peru than we had originally thought we were going to at the beginning of the trip, which just allowed us to see so many different parts, and they ended up being some of our favorites. There's only like 2 places I would say that if we had a little bit more time that we would go to visit. One of the ones is north of Lima, and it is a city called Juarez. Now this is known as the mountaineering capital of Peru, so it's a great place to situate yourself to then do a whole bunch of outdoorsy activities like hiking and everything like that. The other place that we didn't quite get to is Nazca. Now this is a place that we probably would have visited if we had taken the bus from Lima to Cusco. This is known for having really cool archaeological sites that feature giant geoglyphs on the desert floor, and the most popular way to view them is from the plane above, just because they are so big.
Now, it wouldn't be a Robin and Graham travel guide video if we didn't talk about the food. Peruvian food was absolutely delicious. We're going to list some of our favorites, some we tried, some we didn't try. Now, lomo saltado, chicharrón de pollo, ceviche, casa, papa a la huancaina, and picarones.
Now, 2 of the popular drinks that we would recommend you trying is Inca Cola. That's like a super vibrant yellow pop drink there. And then, of course, a pisco sour. Another one would be chicha morada, which is a purple corn drink, which is a very interesting taste, and I actually really liked it.
And that wraps up our time in Peru. We were really impressed with the diversity and the different ecosystems that Peru has. We literally were on the coast, in a desert,
in the mountains,
in the jungle, and all within 3 weeks is just super, super impressive.
We're not going to sugarcoat it. This trip had many different ups and downs, but I would do it again in a heartbeat.
So if you're thinking about backpacking Peru, absolutely put it on your list. It is a great place for a new adventure, and there's so many different things you can do.
It's great for the outdoorsy person.
But I think that's where we're going to leave this video. We hope you enjoyed it, and we'll see you in the next one.
Bye-bye!
It was definitely rainy because where am I? It's best to kind of pack for a variety of different cultures, and taking in the sights from there. Is hang out in the Plaza de Armas, which is the main.
Armas? That's what you said.
Now, other than the walking to, I didn't really get that part.